Over the last couple of months, I've completely failed to commit and maintain a daily yoga practice. Maybe you've been through periods like this in your own yoga journey. In this video, I'm going to share with you the road to my recovery and the act of failing at keeping my yoga practice going, how that's actually been more helpful than keeping my yoga practice going in many ways and what I've learned from that. So if you're interested in developing a daily yoga practice, committing to a daily yoga practice, and maintaining a daily yoga practice, and would like to learn from my experience, challenges, and failing forward, then keep watching. Hi, I'm Melissa from Yoga with Melissa. I've been practicing yoga for almost 25 years, if you count this last little fail, and teaching yoga for close to 20 years. So this year, when I hit a major bump in my personal practice and I felt really ashamed and embarrassed. I've always told my students that there's something that you can do to bring yoga to your life. And so here I am struggling in many ways to live by my own advice. This year, when I experienced the pain of frozen shoulders, many of the physical yoga practices that I would turn to when I was injured, ill, or exhausted became inaccessible. Things like Shavasana and restorative yoga, because I couldn't lie down on the ground. This really resulted in a major crisis of confidence in myself and in the practice. This physical injury also coincided with some major challenges in my personal life and a dissolution of a spiritual community that I have been involved in the past 6 years as well. So what ended up happening is that I began seeking. I began looking for something that would feed and nourish my spiritual hunger. I began listening to a lot of Dharma talks that previously I'd overlooked because I was being fed. I was being fed in my spiritual community, and it became an intense period of self-study and contemplation. Now, if one of my students were to ask me if this was part of a daily yoga practice, I would have said, yes, all day long, especially when you're injured or you're ill or something is preventing you from coming to a physical practice for the time being. In fact, listening to those teachings is what keeps us inspired to stay practicing. And it's an important overall part of our yoga journey. Without it, we can forget why we are practicing. So interestingly, for years, I had been claiming the aspiration to let go of perfectionism and to let go of control. And now here I was in the perfect life circumstance to support me in letting go of control and letting go of perfectionism. So here's the part that's important. It's going to be an important takeaway for all of us. But before I share it, I want to thank you all so much for liking this video and putting letting go of perfectionism is key in the comments. And thank you so much for subscribing to this channel for more helpful videos like this. Also, just to let you know that starting in December and through the new year of 2021, I am going to be supporting our membership in the 4 P's of daily practice, which are letting go of perfectionism, pondering as in mindset tools or contemplation, practical tips for setting up and maintaining a daily practice, and 4 planning tips for setting up and maintaining a daily yoga practice. So if that's your jam, we'll put a link to the membership in the cards or below. And we're really going to be supportive for the pre-daily practice stuff. It's not just about having daily practices, but how to get to it. So back to letting go of perfectionism. This is totally key. Now, I always thought it was a kind of mental gymnastics that I could perform, that I would somehow decide that I was not going to be perfect anymore or let perfectionism rule my life anymore, and voila, I would be a better person, a new and improved person who would no longer be ruled by perfectionism. Now, the problem with this is that it was actually another form of perfectionism. in which I would decide not to be perfect anymore. And of course, that just wasn't helpful. Another fail. So what I found was through my own failure of not being able to keep a daily yoga practice is that I had this imagined idea of what committing to maintaining a daily yoga practice would be like. So I imagined this perfect practice life where I'd be able to commit to 45 minutes of meditation in the morning when I got up, and then an hour of yoga, and then go to the gym or a walk in the middle of the day, practice yoga nidra after lunch, and then practice yin yoga in the evenings. I should also be able to fit a Dharma talk in there somewhere in the middle of the day. And, at the odd time, I might be able to meet this kind of perfect daily yoga practice in my life. But as you can imagine, most of the times I failed. So my perception of myself was that I was a failure at keeping up with my daily yoga practice. Now, some of the Dharma talks that I had listened to were given by a woman named Kristen Neff, a PhD, who is an expert on self-compassion. She does research on self-compassion. So I started to realize that this experience of failure was extremely difficult. And I started to have compassion for my experience and recognize that, you know what? I'm not the only person going through this experience. There are probably millions of people around the world that are struggling with the perception of feeling like a failure and not being able to keep up with their unrealistic goals. And I learned that in the same way that I have the capacity to judge myself, I actually have the capacity to offer myself kindness and compassion. So this offering of compassion towards my experience has been actually far more valuable than pushing through and maintaining a daily yoga practice. In fact, I'm receiving the fruits of a daily yoga practice, but not in the way that I would have thought I would be receiving them by actually doing the daily yoga. So it reminds me of back when I first started taking yoga classes about 18 years ago at Esther Meyer's yoga studio in Toronto. I met a woman there and she said to me, I've been practicing yoga for 10 years and I'm still miserable. She actually didn't say miserable. She actually used an expletive, but we'll leave it at miserable. So she used discernment and she decided it was time to try something else because the yoga actually wasn't working. And in my experience, not being able to practice yoga every day forced me to face my perfectionist tendencies and find compassion for them in a way that practicing yoga every day could not have offered me. So what am I trying to say? So letting go of perfectionism is a practical thing. Get honest with yourself about what the idea of a perfect yoga practice is to you. So actually write it down. It will probably seem just as ridiculous as my perfect daily yoga practice seemed. Then you can have compassion for your experience of failing to live up to these perfectionist standards and know that you're not alone in it. We all do it. It's part of living in a capitalist culture where you're valued for your productivity. And then you can offer yourself some compassion for this experience. My teacher, Michael Lee from Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy, always said, with awareness comes choice. So when we're aware that we're being ruled by these perfectionist plans, we can make different plans. And ones that are more realistic. And if you'd like support in that, in our community, I'm going to be offering it. I've got plans to offer it in lots of practical ways. We've been doing it for the past 11 years. I've got lots of things planned. So I'm happy to support you there as well. I'm sending you so much love and compassion for our perfectionist tendencies, but also more fully for our inherent compassion and kindness that we can tap into that. I believe in that completely and fully. Namaste.